The NES version of Contra, released in 1988 by Konami, remains one of the most iconic and challenging run-and-gun games of its era. Developed as a port of the 1987 arcade game, it gained immense popularity for its fast-paced action, cooperative gameplay, and memorable difficulty. In Contra, players take on the roles of elite commandos Bill Rizer and Lance Bean as they battle alien forces and enemy soldiers across various stages. Technically, the NES version of Contra had to be scaled down from its arcade counterpart due to the limitations of the NES hardware. The game used 8-bit graphics and ran at a resolution of 256 by 240 pixels, with simplistic yet iconic visuals and environments. The NES's 2 kilobytes of RAM and 128 kilobytes game cartridge were enough to support smooth action, detailed sprites for the characters, and the multiple bullet patterns on screen, though some features from the arcade version had to be omitted. One of the standout features was the music, which utilized the NES's 5-channel sound system to deliver an adrenaline-pumping soundtrack. Despite the hardware limitations, Contra's fast and fluid gameplay, combined with its mix of side-scrolling and pseudo-3D levels, created an unforgettable experience. The game was also notable for its simultaneous 2-player co-op mode, a rarity for NES games at the time. This feature made Contra a staple for multiplayer gaming in the 1980s, as friends could team up to tackle the game's challenging levels. One of the most famous aspects of Contra is the Konami code. Entering the code, up up down down left right BA start, at the title screen grants players 30 lives instead of the standard 3. This code became legendary in gaming culture and has been referenced in various games and media over the years. Despite the extra lives, many players still found Contra to be incredibly difficult, as the game featured one-hit kills and relentless enemy attacks. Some lesser-known facts about Contra include its alternate versions and hidden features. For instance, the Japanese Famicom version featured extra cutscenes and enhanced graphical details, such as animated backgrounds, which were not present in the NES version due to cartridge limitations. This version also had a more elaborate storyline, with additional intermission screens between levels that were omitted in the NES release. Interestingly, in Europe, due to stricter censorship regulations, Contra was rebranded as Probotector, with the human characters replaced by robots to comply with regional standards on violent content. The storyline and gameplay remained the same, but this change has made Probotector something of a cult classic in Europe. Moreover, while Contra is known for its run-and-gun action, the game also introduced players to a unique combination of platforming and shooting mechanics. The difficulty wasn't just about the enemies. Players had to jump and dodge obstacles with precise timing while shooting in multiple directions. This blend of mechanics was relatively novel at the time and would influence many action games that followed. Another fascinating detail is that the game's bosses were inspired by popular sci-fi films, particularly Alien and Predator. Many of the aliens and end-level bosses bear striking resemblances to creatures from these films, showcasing the influence of 1980s sci-fi cinema on the game's design. The Contra franchise, a legendary series of run-and-gun games, has had numerous entries spanning over 3 decades, starting with its arcade debut in 1987. The original Contra was first released in arcades and later became a household favorite on the NES in 1988. Its success sparked the beginning of a prolific series that would evolve across multiple generations of gaming consoles. Following the first game, Konami released Super Contra in 1988, again starting in arcades and later being ported to the NES. The sequel expanded on the fast-paced action with new levels and more difficult gameplay, solidifying Contra's reputation as a tough but rewarding series. In 1991, the franchise shifted to the handheld market with Operation C, which was released on the Game Boy. Though constrained by the handheld's hardware, Operation C maintained the signature Contra intensity and introduced new weapons and levels suited for the portable format. Next came Contra 3, The Alien Wars, launched in 1992 on the SNES. This title is often regarded as one of the pinnacle achievements in the series, bringing stunning 16-bit graphics, impressive boss battles, and tight gameplay. That same year, the NES saw a spin-off, Contra Force, a game that deviated from the traditional Contra formula, featuring a team-based strategy rather than the typical run-and-gun action. It remains an outlier in the series. Contra Hardcore arrived in 1994 for the Sega Genesis/Mega Drive, introducing branching paths and multiple characters, adding a layer of replayability to the franchise. It was one of the more celebrated games on Sega's platform and is often hailed for its brutal difficulty. As the gaming industry moved into the 3D era, CONTRA: Legacy of War was released in 1996 for the PlayStation and Sega Saturn, marking a transition to 3D graphics. However, this title struggled to capture the same magic of its 2D predecessors. The CONTRA adventure followed in 1998, but like its predecessor, it did not fare well with critics or fans, who felt the franchise had lost its identity during the transition to 3D. A return to form came with CONTRA: Shattered Soldier, released in 2002 for the PlayStation 2. This game embraced the classic 2D gameplay style, with modern graphics and updated mechanics, winning back many fans who appreciated the return to the series' roots. In 2004, Neo-Contra followed on the same platform, incorporating some new gameplay perspectives but keeping the action at the forefront. In 2007, Konami celebrated the series' legacy with Contra 4, released on the Nintendo DS. This entry was a love letter to the original games, featuring retro-inspired graphics and gameplay, as well as nods to the previous titles in the form of unlockables and references. Contra Rebirth was released in 2009 on WiiWare, offering fans another retro-styled experience with modern twists. It continued to capitalize on the nostalgia for the original games while introducing fresh content to the newer generation of players. After a period of dormancy, Contra: Rogue Core was released in 2019 for modern consoles like PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Nintendo Switch, and PC. Unlike previous games, Rogue Core experimented with a more modern, twin-stick shooter style of gameplay. However, it struggled to connect with audiences in the same way the earlier entries had. Throughout its history, the Contra franchise has remained a significant part of gaming culture. While some of its entries found greater success than others, the series as a whole has left an indelible mark on the run-and-gun genre, with fans continuing to celebrate its impact on the industry. The legacy of Contra remains strong, with the NES version often cited as one of the best games of its time. Its challenging gameplay, cooperative mode, and memorable music continue to resonate with players, solidifying its status as a classic. While it may have started as an arcade title, the NES version of Contra is often considered the definitive version, with a special place in gaming history.